Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of Skolders and Spice. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on the Vikings First and Skol Network. Tonight, I am joined by one of my favorite Vikings content creators. If you're a Vikings fan and you're on TikTok, you have probably seen his updates and his insightful takes. Vikings Guy, he's here. He's joining us. So I'm very excited to chat with him. We are going to talk about what inspired him to start making Vikings content, and hopefully, I can convince him to fill us in on what it's like to work at US Bank Stadium on game days. Of course, we will also chat about this off season and get his wish list for 2025. So sit back, get ready, and let's talk Vikings off season.
Hey man, how the hell you doing? I've been just fine living life with the news and
Hello, Vikings guy. How you doing?
Listen, it's an honor to be on your show.
Oh my gosh, shush. I was on your show a few weeks ago and I just had such a fun time talking to you. I think we ended up talking like, oh, I don't know, it was like an hour and a half or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there was a ton to talk about. So I was like, can't wait to get you on Skolders and Spice and chat again.
yeah. Well, and I'm not trying to riz you up, but I told a friend that I was on your podcast, and she goes, "What's her name?" And I told her your name, and she looked you up, and she goes, "She's so pretty."
Oh, thank you. What's her
I
name?
know, right? I was like, "Well, she's also good at like talking about sports and stuff too." So
Yeah, what's her name?
there you go. Her name is Samantha.
Oh, well, hey, Samantha, if you're in here, thank you for joining us. But okay, well, how's your off season going? Are you bored yet?
Yeah, for me, it's really difficult. I made a video about the USA hockey team because I do watch hockey on occasion. I live in Minnesota, of course, but yeah, I mean, it's been kind of the doldrums. They drips and drabs these things. You can talk about Kevin O'Connell and his comments about Sam Darnold deserving to be a free agent and all that jazz. But, Kevin O'Connell
Mhm.
says so much stuff that's just kind of filler. That's
Yep.
sort of, he wants you to think, or he wants, Zimmer was way good at that. Like Zimmer could just look at the camera and lie. But with O'Connell, he's got, well, he could. Like that guy was just, he just loved it. Like, how's everybody doing? We're great. Never been better. And his running back's leg is laying in the back seat, right?
Right.
But with O'Connell, if you watch him when he says stuff, he gets a little smirk to him. And you can sort of tell, like with that Daniel Jones things, he kind of goes, I have a lot of respect for Daniel Jones, but, we got our quarterbacks here. And he kind of goes, and it's like, okay, there it was. There it was. But so, yeah, it's been boring. I mean, there's not a lot going on. I did see today that they asked Byron Murphy, a couple guys, two or three guys, to push the expiration of their contracts out right to free agency, which is
Oh, okay.
interesting because I wonder if they're like Byron Murphy, Aaron Jones. There was three of them. I don't remember the other one, but they've got them to push their contracts back to the
When
start
were
of
they
free
ending?
agency. They would end. I think they were expiring this month. I think they
Oh,
expired this month, and then
okay.
they open up at free agency. See, if they push it back, then of course I'm thinking they're probably going to work out something with Aaron Jones. And to be honest, I think they're going to franchise Byron Murphy. I think that'll be their move. Everyone disagrees, but I think that's what they're
Wow.
going to do.
Do you know what the price tag is if they did that?
I would guess it'd be somewhere in the area of 18 to 20 million. It wouldn't be a
Oh,
giveaway.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just
But
have this
he had 7, 8 interceptions last year. I mean, I think with that cornerback room being such a mess, I mean, what are you going to do? You going to let Byron Murphy walk? I don't know how you can.
No. I wouldn't think so, but I was thinking they would, get him a new deal, not franchise tag him. Because what if he has an even better year,
Yeah.
next year? Then they're gonna owe him even more money.
Well, I think franchise him so that people would have to, it would make it hard for people to take him from you.
Mhm.
And then once you franchise him, you can still sign him to a new deal, but at least then you're locking him in so other people don't get a hold of him. Because ultimately, I'd
Sure.
like to see them get a hold of DJ Reed. That to me is their big money signing if they're going to do something on defense. Would be DJ Reed of the Jets.
Oh, yeah, I know that's who everybody wants. Okay,
Yeah.
Christopher Gates and Tyler Fornes are both in the chat, and they said, with moving the void date, they can't franchise tag him anymore. They're losing that option.
Okay.
So
Well, there you
that's
go.
That's interesting. Well, that puts that to bed,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah, well, I didn't hear it. They were talking about it on NFL Network this afternoon, and that didn't sound like that was something that was off the table then. I thought maybe the transition tag was off, but not the franchise tag.
Oh, okay.
But
All
there
right. Well,
is something they have to offer those players in order to get them to move that date because they're not required to move that date. So maybe that was part of that deal.
yeah, I suppose that would make sense. All right, let's say
Mhm.
what's up to the chat here. I see Tyler's here. Hi. And then Chris Gates, like I just said. Dr. Prado is here. Bulldog LLC, my favorite Boston Terrier owner. Good to see you. Eric is here from New Mexico. What's up, King? JB is here, of course. Nice to see you. And then I see Mitch at the top of the chat. I'm wondering if, I don't know if it is, but maybe that's Mitch from Water Cooler Talk, Vikings Water Cooler Talk. Because that's how I actually found out about you. I met him at a bar in Arizona before the playoff game. I was just
Yeah,
wandering around by myself because all my friends went into the game at like 2, 3 hours early. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I met
right,
him and he was like, "Oh, what's your chick?" He's like, "Do you know Vikings Guy?" And I was like, "No, I don't," because I'm very fickle with
yeah,
TikTok. I'll be on there all the time and then I'll leave it for months. So,
right.
and JB, I'm so sorry about Pep. Thank you for coming on. The distraction, his pup passed away recently. So
Oh
I'm so,
no.
so sad to hear that. But all right, back to, so they moved those void days and, interesting that they did them for all three of them. So
Yeah, yeah.
I guess that means
I
no.
don't know the free agents. I mean, I have no clue what they're going to try and do. Yeah, I have a hard time with Aaron Jones because he had like 1,600 all-purpose yards. So it's like, for what you paid him, do you walk away from him? Would he be okay with a 1-year deal again?
Mhm.
Um, it's a scheme issue and it's a protection issue, I think. So it's like, so you bring in the next guy, what's that going to be like? If they don't change the protection stuff, is it sort of the same thing? I- It does.
Right.
I'm not going to say it doesn't matter who you have, but it seems like the running backs that are back there just don't have a lot of success.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I guess I would assume that he would get another 1-year deal just because of his age, and obviously last year he only got a 1-year deal. So I guess it could be maybe he could get a 2-year deal somewhere, but I don't know. The
Right.
free market didn't offer him up that last year. Obviously, yeah, coming off of his best season. So I don't know. It's interesting, but all right, let's talk about you a little bit for maybe anybody
Yeah.
who doesn't know you. So like I said, I discovered you on TikTok. You have such cool
Sure.
content on there, and then you also have a podcast and a channel here on YouTube as well.
Hmm.
I have
Yeah.
the links in the chat for you guys, but I'm wondering what inspired you? Why did you want to start creating Vikings content?
Well, I think part of it is that I've always had an interest in being kind of in the Vikings. I don't want to call it a media sphere, but more like in the social media sphere. Having worked at US Bank Stadium, I have access to a lot of things that I think most people wouldn't really see.
Mhm.
Get to meet players, get to meet executives, not just of the Vikings, but of other teams. And for me, it was an opportunity to kind of share some of the behind the scenes things that I do get to see at the stadium because there's people really don't understand what sort of machine the NFL is until you work around it. And when,
Yeah.
as a fan from the distance, you see, oh, yeah, they make this $1 billion and Roger Goodell does this or whatever. But when you meet the folks, I mean, they say on any given day, the NFL has like what, 600 employees at every single game, like doing
Oh, wow.
things.
Oh
And
my
so
god.
the
600?
footprint of the footprint of the NFL is huge. And most of those people, I don't think ever really, thanks for sharing that, by the way, the TikTok and the podcast. I don't think a lot of people get to see really how the sausage is made, really how it's made. And so that's
Never
really
hear
what
that.
inspired that. Well, you know,
That's funny.
yeah, I'm a food truck guy too, so I do a lot of food stuff, but I don't think people get to see how that's all done, and so I kind of wanted to not expose it because I don't think there's nefarious things, but I think just put it out there. There's players, families I talk to, and a lot of that stuff is private, and I would never ever like out someone's family, but there are times I hear things and it sort of makes, and I ask the questions because I want to put the pieces together for people, so when they
Mhm.
hear things, yeah, this is how this was. For instance, I talked to somebody from Dallas Turner's family and he told me that Dallas fully expected to be drafted by the Atlanta Falcons.
Oh,
even
at
late
number
in- even even late in that evening, the Atlanta Falcons officials were telling him that he was going to the Falcons.
Oh,
And
wow.
they, this family member was truthfully, he said that Dallas was pretty shocked when Atlanta chose Penix and not him.
I think everybody was.
Yeah, and so he said he was fully prepared to go to the Atlanta Falcons, right up to within a couple picks.
Oh, wow. Wow, so he
Yeah.
was surprised. So had
So
he
there's
had much
that. So
interaction with the Vikings as far as you know?
no, not much. He said that they talked to him. That was on a pro day. There'd been discussions, but nothing real serious.
Mhm.
Because he knew the Vikings were in discussions to get a franchise quarterback. He kind of felt the direction with
Yeah,
quarterback. And then when
right.
Turner was available, it was a deal that I don't think the Vikings could turn down. And Dallas was happy to be here. He was just surprised that that was where he ended up because he just didn't expect that's what it was.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes total sense. So how long
yeah,
have you worked at US Bank Stadium?
yeah. So I started there when it opened, so
Oh my
2016.
gosh. Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Yeah, that's a
yeah.
while now. What
I
made
had an
you wanna
executive
start
from the well, and I live 2.5 hours one way away. So
Yeah.
it's not like I'm a hop, skip, and a jump away from the stadium. And I had an executive with the Vikings the other day say, I just can't believe you drive 5 hours round trip to go to a football game. And I
Yeah.
said, man, I've been losing money and putting miles on the car since 2016. And it's not just Vikings games, but I work concerts there too, and different special events. I for about 6 months I was participated in tours, and there were a lot of different things I've done there. Worked in the operations center, but really when I started, I told someone this the other day. I was hired as an usher, a ticket taker. I never worked in that position ever. I was
Oh,
hired. I went to the first training, and then they hired me to do tech support with Wi-Fi, and then help with mobile ticketing because the Vikings were like the second or third team overall to go to an all mobile ticket platform.
sure, that makes sense.
Um, yeah, and so we were basically a group of us, about 25, 30 people who would help people on game days get on their phones, get the tickets pulled up, help people navigate the app. And the app really is tremendous for a lot of people who've never used it. The Vikings app is really, really good. And I talked to an executive of the stadium the other day, and they said they invested another, I think it was almost $50 million into new Wi-Fi at the stadium.
Oh,
Um,
and when did you say they did
yeah.
that?
They did that this last off, or it would have been towards the end of the season. So just as the season ended, they finished. I think they call it 6G equipment.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
it definitely
so
works
they
better.
they
That makes
yeah,
sense.
they said there was 7G available, but it's really new, and they were worried about the bugs. And so they just invested, I think, 40 or $50 million to upgrade that Wi-Fi system. And
Oh,
so
goodness.
yeah, so the Vikings are doing stuff, and there's more improvements coming, some changes coming to a lot of that stuff that I can't really say, but exciting stuff is coming for
Yeah.
Viking fans.
Well, I love it that the Wilfs, they don't really skimp out on stuff, they pay on things that are gonna give the fans the best
Yeah,
experience, and there's a lot of owners out there that do not do that, so I genuinely appreciate it, as I'm sure
yeah,
everyone does, and those who don't know that the Wilfs are always throwing money at stuff that needs to be done, I mean, they definitely deserve the respect for that. What would
for
you
sure.
say is your favorite thing about working a Vikings game? Well, first of all, how much do you
Yeah.
get to see? Like, how much percentage of the game would you say you see?
Yeah, I don't wanna get in trouble with my
Oh, okay. Well,
bosses, but,
I say,
you kn yeah. No, I mean, here's the thing, the job is designed so that when the work is when you get your job done or you're in your job to be able if you're fortunate enough to watch games. I've worked there a long time, I'm like 10th or 12th, and I'm even probably a little lower than that in the seniority level of people who started there and been there the longest. And
Mhm.
so really, when I say the difference in the list is about a month or two of hire dates, so really I'm within a month or two of the person who's been there the longest. And so with my job as a supervisor, I help people get in and out of the stadium. I'm in charge typically of one gate of ingress and egress in and out. And
Mhm.
then I make sure the ticket takers, ushers, and the leads, the supervisors below me, or that work for me, are in their positions doing their jobs, which we have a great crew there. I mean, it's a lot of experienced
Yeah.
people, a lot of solid folks. I never have any worries. They make my job so easy. And so when that's done, I have a radio on, and I walk around and put out proverbial fires and help security get where they need to go, and or if there's people, things like vaping or things they shouldn't be doing in the stadium, I sort of help iron. I'm the guy that helps irons a lot of that stuff out, because basically there's the stadium manager and her people, and then a group of 9, 10 of us that are right below her.
Yeah,
So
I laughed about the vaping because one of my SKOL cam pictures this year, you zoom in on
yeah.
the picture, and
Oh
somebody
no,
in my
Sally.
row, not me, I don't vape.
Oh,
Somebody
okay.
in my
Okay.
row is just like huffing that vape like they are sucking. It's so funny.
That's precious.
They were
Yeah.
not discreet at all, and it wasn't one of those little ones either. It was like
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah, so
cool.
to answer your question too, so I watch a lot of the game. I watch a lot of the game, and that's part of the experience too. Is in what I do is helping people enjoy the game. The fans appreciate seeing, like, I wear a suit to every game. They appreciate seeing a guy in a suit,
Yeah,
with whatever, cheering like a regular fan, because I am a regular fan. But
right.
um, so I watch a lot of the football, and then when I come home from games, yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a night game or whatever it is. I mean, I watch the game back to back. I'll watch it the full game, kind of flip through the commercials, and the next day I'll watch it full again, and then I watch the all 22 on Tuesdays or Wednesdays,
Oh
to try
goodness.
and well, because I want to try and see. There's a lot of things in the heat of the battle. Like if I have a job, I can't necessarily just go, "Oh gosh, what happened on that third down?"
Oh
So
yeah, I
I do
mean,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
hard to
So
pay attention even as a fan to the whole thing, and you don't know necessarily what the penalty was. There's a lot of
right.
things that you miss when you're not watching on TV, so I
Yeah.
get that for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, the commentary. I don't want to stop you quick, but I have this new pennant up here, the Victor pennant.
I saw
That's my
that.
new
I
one.
saw that.
Yeah, and my new
Yeah.
Vikings sign, my new
Yeah.
neon. So I
Yeah, I
I
do
made
love
some
the stuff.
changes just for this, Sally, just for you.
Oh,
So
Victor was just for me, huh?
yeah, I thought you'd enjoy it. I mean, that's such a
We
whimsical character.
Yes, Skolders and Spice has not heard about my Victor past yet. We'll have to save. I mean, we'll have that should be an off-season episode. But yeah, I appreciate you putting him in view for me. I
Well,
have him
yeah.
on the candle here, but this is like the old. This is the old Victor.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
candle.
Yeah. And for people that don't know,
Yeah.
that mustache comes off for special occasions.
Okay. Skull Mafia, what's up, King? Thank you so much for the super chat. He wants to know what hat you're wearing. What's the tea there with the
Yeah.
hat?
Yeah, so this actually is an original design of mine. I got another one here. So it says "Make Vikings Great Again," and
Mhm.
I have a purple version as well. This is my official hat. It's on my TikTok. If you go to Vikings Guy Day One, you can order one. You can ask for the one, and when I said "Make Vikings Great Again," I put JJ McCarthy on the back of it.
Oh
And
wow.
so you can order it there. If you have it shipped, it's 35 bucks shipped. But yeah, that's my original hat. Make Vikings great again. There's some people that don't love it because they say it resembles too much of another reddish hat. But
A red version?
this is yeah.
Yeah.
And people ask when the Vikings were great. I said they went to 4 Super Bowls in the 70s. They won like 9 division championships. And when were they not great? I mean, that was great. So
It was before my time, so I can't say I wasn't around for it. But hey, those 4 NFC championship games, they were great until they weren't. So so
yep,
I
that's
understand
it.
I
Yeah.
understand that. JB wants to know, are you into peanut butter popcorn? Are you
Peanut
a
butter
peanut butter guy? Are
popcorn.
you a peanut butter guy?
Yeah,
He
I
made
mean, listen, yeah, it's interesting. I'm a big popcorn guy, and we don't get concessions at the stadium. We're not allowed to buy them.
Oh,
Yeah, and so actually, they have a place in the stadium called the Colonel that sells the best popcorn, I think, in the NFL.
the line is
And
so long, always.
it is, it is,
Yeah.
it is. It's very good. So I couldn't have it. And so what I did is I found out what type of popcorn and the oil and the machine, and I bought all of it.
Oh, wow. Okay,
So yeah,
yeah,
I spent like
it
two
must be
thousand
good.
dollars, and now I can make that stadium popcorn at my house. But the answer to the question is yes. If you want this hat, you can go to Vikings Guy Day One on TikTok. Send me a DM, and we'll set you up. Have it to you in three to
Wow.
five days. Sorry, Sally, that's my sales pitch, but
No, hey, if you have custom stuff, you took the effort to make it.
yeah,
Absolutely, talk about it. I always say I want to make custom stuff, but I'm not really creative enough. So many
yeah,
people make cool stuff. I don't know. I'm more, my girl Shelby already makes the custom stuff and she does a great
Yeah.
job. So I just buy stuff from her. But all right. Well, we talked about the stadium and you said you've done the tours before.
Mm,
I did the touchdown I've done a couple tours, but last year I did the touchdown tour. They invited
sure.
me to come do it. And something that caught me by surprise, because you said sometimes you interact with people from the away teams. I
Yeah.
couldn't. Okay, so you go into the away team suite that the owners are in and all of that. And I thought it
Mhm.
was so interesting that every game the Vikings put up a player, like a portrait of a player of theirs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when I was there for the Raiders game, or it was the Raiders preseason, it was right before I did my tour, and it was actually like a good photo. It wasn't like the Vikings kicking their ass. So that definitely caught me by surprise.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting for those of you who are kind of new to that. The Vikings actually, and this is sort of an inside deal, the Vikings actually will go before every game in the visiting owner's suite, and they replace the picture of the opposing team inside the suite to a
Mhm.
moment where the Vikings might have dominated or had a big moment against them in that game. And the thing is, the visiting ownership doesn't know that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
And so, and who pays attention to that? But everyone in the stadium knows that's what's going on. And so,
Right.
yeah, it's just kind of one of those funny things that most people don't really, most people don't pay attention to. We do because we're on the inside of that thing. But it's
Yeah.
always been one of those really clever things the Vikings do.
Mhm.
There's, to top that, Sally, there's just a lot of things that the Minnesota Vikings do on game day that
Mhm.
makes them different from a lot of different teams. And you said it about the Wilfs; they spare no expense in
Yep.
making this a top couple three in the, I think number one really, but in the top three of NFL pregame Showtime events. They make it a Vikings game an event. I mean, you've been to plenty of games that if you're not there to sit down once before Showtime starts and you miss that stuff, I mean, that's a big portion of what you go to love and what gets you really hyped for the game.
I know. I hate it when I miss it because I'm usually just like booking it from the tailgate lot, because it's one of those things where we're like, all right, we're
Yeah.
gonna go in at 11:30, and then next thing you know, it's 11:45. Yeah, pack all this stuff up or whatever. But so I'm usually in the concourse when the snow is coming down and stuff, and I'm
Yeah.
always mad when I'm not in my seat. But yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, if you've been to away games anywhere else in the league, you can definitely see the difference. Absolutely. I mean, there's entertainment every commercial break. There's always stuff
Sure.
going on. And you mentioned the staff, the people that you work with. Everyone
Hmm.
is always fabulous there. And if you really want to like take it in, of course, you expect everybody to do wonderful. So I don't think you necessarily appreciate it. But then you go somewhere like Target Center and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. No, not that they're
Yeah.
bad at Target Center, but they're definitely not as attentive or in touch with what's going on by any
Yeah.
means. So
Well, and
yeah.
to kind of a couple things I wanted to mention, not to go back to it quick, but one of these hats, because you were on the podcast, you are going to get one of these. I got a new shipment
Oh,
in. You get one for free.
beautiful.
So there you
Oh my
go.
gosh. Well,
Anybody
I'll
anybody
take the
who's
first
on the
one.
podcast, I already sent one to Alan Roach. He'll be getting his soon. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. Like this weekend, the Vikings actually had an event out at TCO Performance Center where they gave a tour of the entire facility, and they threw on a flag football clinic for the employees' children,
Oh, wow.
um, which was awesome. My kids had never been to TCO.
Mhm.
I've been fortunate enough to been in the place 10 or 12 times, not to brag, but I've gotten lost probably 6 of those 12 times. Skull Mafia, if you want it, Sally, I'll
Yeah.
post some stuff. If you go to my YouTube, just go to my YouTube, you can send me a message at VikingsGuy day1 at Gmail. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
so
I could
that's
drop
those
you the
kind of,
link
yeah,
I can drop
yeah,
you the link to Skull Mafia in your DMs on Twitter if
yeah,
you want. Let
yeah.
me
I'll
jot
help you
that down though,
guys.
'cause I could forget.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that.
Um,
Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted there, but yeah, there's just a lot of things that they do for their employees. We had a employee party the other night, and they had a player there, and hopefully next week, I think Harrison Phillips is going to be on the pod, so
oh
that
my
should
god,
be
awesome.
yeah, that should be a good one. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Alan Roach. I also met him. For you guys who don't know, he's what do you call him? I mean, he's
The
the
public
US.
address, the Minnesota Vikings public address announcer at US Bank Stadium.
Sure, okay, that's his official name. But so he's the
Mhm.
guy it's third and two, and it's like he
Yeah.
just has the best voice ever. But I met him in Arizona also before the before the playoff game, and he was a super nice guy. I'm gonna have him on here
Yeah.
sometime, but Yeah. Who would you say is like your favorite guest that you've had on, or like the most surreal person to talk to, maybe?
Well, I would if it wasn't you, I would I don't want to cut you right out of that.
Well,
But it's there's been so many different walks of life. This season has been great. We had Chad Greenway on. He was such a nice guy, such a nice guy.
mhm,
But I've done public announcing and some radio. And I would say probably my favorite guest, just because of the interest, was Alan Roach. I mean, Alan Roach, the public address announcer for the Vikings, is also the public address announcer for the NFL. Totally. And so he just did the last Super Bowl. He's done 14
mhm,
Super Bowls for the NFL. And so just to have him in the same sphere as me, he's a Minnesota guy, born in Minnesota, which was cool.
mhm.
That was great. We had Adam Rank from NFL Network. He hops onto my TikToks now, which
Yeah,
is pretty
because you do a lot
cool.
of lives. You do a lot of lives on
Yeah.
TikTok.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Super
so
cool.
for him to pop in there, the thing about Adam Rank is he's so knowledgeable about people around the NFL, has met most of the coaches, does
Mm.
that weekly, I think a couple days a week. He does NFL fantasy on NFL Network with Cynthia Freeland. And so I like how connected he is. And going through the offseason. Yep, he's also the Colorado Avalanche public address, Alan Roach. I'm working on getting some PFF guys on the podcast too, or gals, because
Mm.
I really want to get more into the analytics. I think there's a lot of interest in that.
Sure, yeah.
Um, I don't do it.
It's
I don't
above
do
my
much
pay
fantasy
grade, but for
football.
sure.
What's
If you're watching
that?
I said that's above my pay grade, but yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah,
If you're watching the 22Y, then yes, of course.
yeah.
That's right up your alley. Alex Micheletti, hi. It's so good to see you. Thank you for popping in. And Rap, hi. I'm so happy that you're here. I was tuning into your show earlier. And
Geez, you
somebody
got
else I
Micheletti
see.
here too. This is a big time production, Sally.
Yeah, I know. We have a Micheletti here. And who else
Awesome.
did I need to say hey to? I saw somebody else. Okay, Norsefias, hey, George, hi, good to see you too. And Bob Swede. All these guys are talking about TikTok. They don't do TikTok. They don't do TikTok. It's for
Yeah,
kids. It's really not, because it gives
yeah,
you. I used to think the same. Like, I totally missed the boat on TikTok in like 2020, because it like really took off during COVID. And I'm like, no,
yeah,
it's stupid. It's all It's all dances with teenagers, and I'm not doing that. And it's actually like it gives you the algorithm. It's
yeah,
the best at an algorithm of any app, which is why people want to ban it because of the algorithm's too good. But
yeah.
it's really not. There's all sorts of people on TikTok. It's great. It's not at all what I thought it was.
Yeah. Well, you're right. And I would say too, there's some comments too about Adam Rank. When I first connected with Adam Rank, I really trolled him a bit on TikTok because he is so Bears positive, because he's the giantest Bears fan in the world. But you get him on the podcast like I did, or talk to him on TikTok, and he is very realistic about truly where teams are headed. And like his prediction segment is like from June or July, that he does for the season. And so there's been no major injuries, there's been no training camp. And he says, I'm asked to go out there and throw out these predictions when what kind of, so and so goes in, tears their Achilles, their quarterback's out for the year. Okay, well, I picked them to win the division. So what happens is people will cherry pick his pick.
Oh,
You
sure.
said they were going to be. You said they were going
Right.
to be 12-5, and it's like, well, yeah, but their quarterback died, and their running
Right.
back got caught with drugs or whatever, right? So, and he puts himself out there, which I give him credit for, and it's one of those things where you see these opposing fans, and you're just like, oh, I can't take them. When you get to know Adam Rank, he's just one of the most connected, and honestly, one of the nicest guys in the NFL I've ever dealt with.
Yeah. That's great. Chris
Yeah,
Gates says he picks the Vikings to go 4-13 every year. I must have missed that, but
he
I think
does.
that's
He
not
has a
far off from what I said this year. So
Yeah. He has a hell of a lot of respect for Kevin O'Connell.
yeah, coach of the
He's
year.
met Kevin O'Connell. He said he's just one of the best. He goes, you guys have one of the best coaches in the NFL.
It's interesting how that's like a universal opinion. I mean, even obviously
Yeah,
the award, but even before that, everyone says that. I don't remember ever hearing that about any past Vikings coaches. Not even that they were good, not even great, just
right,
just decent. It's
right.
because
Yeah,
think about it. I mean, we had Zimmer. No one said anything nice about him. Before that, Leslie Frazier didn't have a lot of accolades, and then Brad Childress. There hasn't
Right.
been anybody talking, saying nice things about Vikings coaches in a long time.
Well, because they've really been mostly goofs. I mean, when you go back to the
Mike
early
Tice.
part of the Vikings, Van Brocklin wasn't, he was a well-respected quarterback in the NFL, but not a very good coach. Bud Grant comes in and steers the ship for, what is it, 17 years. Turns it over to Les Steckel, who's the biggest goof in the history of the Minnesota Vikings, lost 13 games that year, was just the worst Viking season they ever had. And just to prove the talent that they had in that, what was it, 84 team?
I don't know.
83 or 84. The next year, Bud Grant comes back. The Vikings beg him to come back and coach in kind of like a bridge position, and they're 500.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
and then it got turned over. The person they should have hired was Jerry Burns, who was a really underrated coach for the Vikings. He was Vince Lombardi's offensive coordinator for years, won 2 Super Bowls with the Packers. So yeah, once you get past that, a lot. Denny Green was good, but I think that Mike Tice was a bit of a goof. I like Mike Tice, but he's a bit of a
Yeah,
goof.
he is.
Um,
He's a
you
lovable
know,
goof. Yeah.
he is. He's a very nice guy. But I think too that he dealt with ownership that they weren't. He wasn't really their guy.
Oh no, the Wolves came in and they wanted to do their own thing. So yeah, they had to move on.
Yeah,
And that was his only head coaching job was. Well, he had a
it
lot
was.
going on that year also. Let's like take aside what the Wolves thought of him. I mean, he had the Love Boats
Yep.
starting 6-0 and then falling apart, not making the playoffs. And I forgot about this until recently. He had that gambling scandal.
Yeah, he sold Super
Or
Bowl
was it
tickets.
yeah, it was Super Bowl tickets, and so, I mean, he just did not have a good image after all of that.
Yeah. No, yeah, and then
Mm.
like I said, he actually was trending the right way, and he wasn't the Wilfs guy. They were ready to move on, and Chili was a hard guy to take, Childress, just because his personality was awful. And
Mhm.
he's one of these people, Sally, that he's lucky, really, because whatever room he walks into, he's the smartest guy ever.
Oh, right, yeah, for
In
sure.
right, and his kick-ass offense or whatever he called it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and Favre saved him until he couldn't. I mean, and then with Childress cutting Randy Moss without telling the Wilfs, that's a whole thing too. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
Chili, God, that guy. I'm so happy that to have Kevin O'Connell because he's a pro's pro, right? He says the right things, he does the right things. And you look at we talked a little bit about the arrests that the Vikings had on my podcast, and those arrests have pretty much trickled to nothing
Yeah.
since since
Just our one
O'Connell.
guy
Yeah,
that I can think of, just JA with the first one wasn't an arrest, just that. Well, how
yeah,
fast was he going? Like
yeah. He had
100.
that DUI down in L.A. or whatever. But it's I I don't know. You're 20 years old. You got $6 million. You own a Lamborghini. Uh, you-
Yeah.
if
Well,
I was that age with that kind of money, I would have driven at 150 mile an hour through St. Paul. He said that. He actually said, this is funny because he said that his pet was sick and he was rushing his pet to get help.
yeah, his dog, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I would do the same thing for my dog, but
The dog
you know,
wasn't in the car, I guess he was going to get
correct.
him supposedly,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, look, I
yeah,
did dumb stuff when I was 20 years old as well,
yeah.
so
And we
I
didn't
never
have
went
that
off
kind of
into
money. I mean, I'd have been dead for sure.
yeah, the same probably. I wasn't far off, but yeah, you brought up Brad Childress. The show I did before this, Believe in Vikings, with Bryant McKinney. For like the
Yeah,
4 years I was on there, I think I probably brought up Brad Childress at least 80% of the shows. Had any opportunity to bash Brad Childress, any guest we had on from that era, any opportunity to bash
yeah.
Brad Childress. It's one of my favorite pastimes. But you mentioned Brett Favre, and so
Mhm.
I want to chat about that really quick because I think that I don't know. I think it's very unrealistic and I don't think it's going to happen. But people, of course, are making the parallels between Aaron Rodgers and the trajectory matching up with Brett Favre. And so it's just kind of fun to talk about, I suppose. But
Yeah.
obviously, I don't think it's going to happen. But he'll be hitting free agency. How would you react if he did end up coming to the Vikings? Could you? I'm assuming you enjoyed Favre when he was here. Like
I
you
did.
forget him. Could you do the same for
Mhm.
Aaron? Like
You
real life
know,
situation aside, like say JJ McCarthy, like whatever's going on isn't really going on.
you know, it's really tough because before Favre came here, I hated the fact that he was with the Packers, but I respected the shit out of who he was. He was a good old boy. And
Hmm.
he was one of those guys. It was hard to cheer against Favre because Favre felt like one of us, right? He felt like a Huckleberry. Hey, I'm just a guy from Louisiana who has not, or Mississippi that's just here for the fun. Rodgers, on the other hand, is that Northern California dink that just grates you every time he says something, and it's hard for me to get behind him because of that. And it's not just because he destroyed the Vikings a number of years. It's
Yeah.
more of just his because Favre did that too. I mean, Favre did things to us that were really difficult to take, but Rodgers did a pretty effective job of trolling the Vikings when they would beat us.
Yes.
And I don't know. Would I get behind him? Yes. Do I want it to impede JJ's progress? I don't. And if it means JJ sitting and we just piss away a year and we go 6 and whatever 11 or whatever, I don't want that. I don't
Yeah,
want
right,
that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I will say, and I hate to admit this, but he did grow on me a little bit in his Netflix docuseries. I certainly
Yeah.
don't hate him as much as I always have, and I honestly feel this is ridiculous too. Feel a little bit bad for him, just how terrible he's been. But yep, as people are saying in the chat, he has proven that he's not a good teammate and he can't get
Yeah.
along with coaching staff. And he's another guy who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing back when he was in his prime with Green Bay. Like, yeah, sure, give this
Yeah.
guy a seat in the draft room. He knows what he needs. That doesn't bother me. But where he's at now, still getting coaches fired and whatever. We'll stop talking about him, you guys.
Well,
I think it's everyone on Twitter is talking about putting him. They're
yeah.
using a guy to put him in a Vikings jersey and all of this stuff. So it's topical. It's the off season. We don't got much to go on.
Sally, the meter for me with you is, would you ever put him on a T-shirt that you'd wear?
No. No.
Eh.
He's
Okay,
he's
so
not
the Vikings are
Sam
12 and
Darnold
0.
treatment.
There's no December T-shirt coming. I mean, if the answer is maybe, I'd accept it.
No, absolutely not. No. I don't usually go with the t-shirt. I'm the one who falls in love with the like underdog story. They're the only ones
Yeah,
getting my t-shirt. Sam Darnold,
yeah,
Duke Shelley, I'll put him on a t-shirt, even though he's canceled
sure,
now. Those are the guys who deserve a t-shirt spot for me, not
yeah.
Aaron Rodgers. No, absolutely
And I
not.
have to, seeing how much fun I've made of you tonight, I'm sure this will be the last time any of you see anything of me. So I'm
Mm.
just laying it all out for Sally. I'm saying all kinds of funny things, but
No, I
truly
love it.
though, and we talked about that, Sally. One thing I respect you for is just your fandom. I mean, it's really this pure emotional thing that I think a lot of people aren't really willing to engage in anymore because we've all just been destroyed year after year after year. And even for me, it's like I predicted them to win 10 games last year, but even after we'd won 13, I thought, well, I don't know, run game's terrible, and
Right. Well,
I
and then
want
I
to
thought
I
the
want to
division
believe, but it does kill me.
I know. I thought, I mean, obviously the division did turn out, to have great records, but I thought they're not going to be able to compete in this division with Detroit and Green
Yeah.
Bay. And so obviously they proved me wrong. And then all of them were out. None of them even made the NFC Championship game. But
Yeah.
okay, Bulldog brought up, and not to go back to Chili, but like I said, I never miss an opportunity to shit on him. Childress cut Marcus Robinson on Christmas Eve just to be a jerk. And one of another story I think is terrible was Troy Williamson. His grandmother died. And first of all, Chili said he could not go home. And then he did anyway. And then he fined him a game check. And then, according to what Bryant McKinney told me, a lot of the older guys, the captains, and they got together and they went in his office and they're like, you're going to give him that check back. And so
Wow.
eventually Chili did. But if you've listened to my show before, and I've talked about this a million times, Troy Williamson actually like one of my very favorite guests of all the guests that we had on in the 4 years. And I am going to have him on for Men's Mental Health Month in June. He's going to come on and we're going to talk all about that because it actually he'll talk about it. But a lot of his issues ended up being undiagnosed mental health issues and not the eyes. So
Wow.
very interesting.
He
Love
was
Troy. Love
he was
Troy.
just he I feel bad for Troy Williamson because, like truly, he was in an impossible position with the
Oh
Vikings. It's
yeah.
like, hey, who's the guy that's replacing Randy Moss?
Yes.
Well,
And on our
okay,
podcast, not to interrupt you, not on our podcast, we literally had Randy Moss on. And, obviously blows your mind. Like one of the best moments of my life ever that I got to talk to Randy Moss and
jeez,
ask him about the catering and all that.
yeah,
And Bryant texts us the next week and he's like, okay, I got Troy Williamson booked for the show. And we're like, I was just, it's like, first of all, I mean, you can't make it up the timing, but I was so struggling with what to talk to him about, which I probably would have been anyway, because you don't want to offend him or what do you ask him? But to have him right after Randy was just really tough going into it. But
yeah,
like I said, then he
yeah.
ended up being one of my favorite guests because he's so candid, so honest, like just a great guy to talk to. So it ended up being fine, but to have those two back to back was pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. That's Norsefius. I listen. I will come back. I told Sally I'm not. I would come back. She's great. But yeah, that Williamson thing. I think people forget too. When I was sitting at TCO Performance the other day, and we were lining up kicking field goals with my kids, and I stepped back to the 33, which is really where you kick the field. Well, it's a 23, but your 33-yard extra point, and you look
Hmm.
at all the kickers and the problems the Vikings had. Let me tell you something, folks. Those goalposts are more narrow than you think. And to
They
kick that football like that with accuracy, okay, there's some wind or it's snowing or whatever. We don't give any of those players enough credit, including Williamson. I mean, to step in there in that position with all that pressure, and he's a fast guy. I mean, these guys who play in the NFL, even if they're not the top level guys statistically, they would
Mhm.
still kick our asses up and down a field.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's just the nature of the talent. I played flag football one year with a guy who played practice squad for the Saints. He was my cornerback in flag football, an adult flag football league, and he was our wide receiver. And he was a guy that couldn't crack the squad for the Saints, right, in the late 90s.
Mhm.
And guess what? He was a 4.340 guy. We won our league. We scored 50, 60 points a game because all you had to do was line that fella up, run him down the field. And their best white bread cornbread guy from middle of nowhere are the guys that we'd play him at cornerback. Nobody could burn him but that's a guy that couldn't even crack the lineup.
Right, yeah. And you bring up the
He's taking
field
all these
goal.
high school guys and destroying them. Yeah.
For people who don't know, if you do the ultimate touchdown tour at US Bank Stadium, you can kick field
I
goals
know.
on the actual field yourself. So that's pretty cool. You can throw touchdowns to your friends. And obviously, I don't have a lot of experience catching footballs, but
Yeah.
man, that thing is just bouncing off my hands, even
Yeah.
when it's
It's
like soft pass.
It's wild the bounces that it takes, and get in there and feel the turf. I will say, I'm not just being a homer for US Bank Stadium. That ultimate touchdown tour is one of the best values in the Twin Cities when you're looking at what you get from it, the length of the tour, the places they take you. You go on a Friday for one of those ultimate touchdown tours, you're in the locker room. You're seeing the equipment, you're seeing the jerseys.
No, KOC doesn't let you anymore. You can only
Oh, did
like
he stop that?
go.
Well, they were
Yeah,
doing it, I thought, this season still.
you can only go in. I mean, I would say maybe like 7 or so feet, and it's like roped off.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So they're
they
letting
say
you
it
in. They're
they
just not
said it's
letting
a
you by the
KOC.
yeah.
Yeah, they said it's a KOC rule, but then I feel like a couple years ago, they were doing tours during the draft party. I think that was his first year, so he must have changed it after that, but I know it's
Right.
a bummer. You can still see everything, and they let you go in the press conference room now, so, I
Right.
mean, I don't
Yeah,
know. That's it's kinda
well,
cool.
it's kind of funny too because with my credentials for the stadium, I don't have field credit. I mean, I'm down around the field, but I have no reason to be on the field. And the NFL patrols that pretty closely. But my
Mhm.
credentials allow me to be in the press room and to the press interview room and one other place that is like, why would I even be there? Like maybe a
Right.
reporter area. Like I have no reason to be there, but there I am. I mean, it was kind of the same at the Super Bowl. I worked for the company that managed the security at the Super Bowl, and I worked for the stadium. And so during the Super Bowl, I was one of the only people that worked at the stadium from higher ups down that actually was allowed field access on the Super Bowl,
Oh, wow.
which was yeah, it was kind of funny because I had no reason to be there, but my
Yeah.
my ID says I can go there. So again, That is a really excellent place to take a tour, and just to feel that turf and how it's set up, and to be down there on the logo. My kids, my son who's 9 said the other day, goes, Dad, we're lucky you're our dad because we get to go places a lot of kids don't get to go. I mean, I never
Yeah.
walked on the field at the Metrodome. I never got to kick footballs in an NFL stadium on a goalpost. I mean, like,
Oh.
these kids they don't understand. This isn't how it goes for everybody, right? I mean, it just isn't how it goes.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And you brought up TCO, and I should probably plug this while I'm here. You guys at TCO, they are doing this. They're doing the winter solstice. I don't know if they still have the ice
wonderful.
skating, but they're doing the
Mhm.
winter solstice. And tomorrow night, they're having bingo from 7 to 9. There's 2-for-1 drinks. They're having food. They are really excited to be hosting this bingo. They were doing it a couple weeks ago, and I think it was too cold, so they had to move it to tomorrow. But I'll be there playing bingo from 7 to 9. I think it's a $2 card, so I think that's just going to be super interesting to be at the Vikings facility doing bingo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that I'll tell you, and that place there, that's winter solstice. I mean, that's worth the money. You get out there. There's so many things to do. If you haven't been to that Vikings museum yet, if you're a Viking fan, it's something that I think you got to get to. There's just some really interesting items in there from every era of the stadium. My favorite exhibit there too at the museum is they have molds of the Hall of Famers' hands.
yeah,
And so
so
you can
cool.
come and place your hand on a football that has their hand on there. And I have
Mhm.
little baby, tiny, girly hands. I'll admit it. They're bad. They're just really, Sally, you would have bigger fingers. And so it's like to place my hand on, like, for instance, Chris Carter's is just like it's like a baby and an adult. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I can't even spread my hand out like enough to even like
Yeah.
reach his pinky. It's like it's
Yeah.
seriously so crazy. But yeah, when the
Yeah.
stadium opened or the museum opened, I think I tweeted something like more like I remember I called it a house of horrors, and I would never go in there until they won a Super Bowl because what do I want to remember? And
Yeah.
Lindsay Young, who I see JB mentioned earlier, she does
Yeah.
writing and stuff for the playbook, and she does really cool feel good stories like Harrison Phillips. She did about him rescuing his dog and all the what they do
Yeah.
for
Lindsay's
rescue.
great. Yep.
Yeah, I love Lindsay, and she saw it, and she, I think, was personally offended by it, and she's like, don't knock it until you try it. And then the Vikings invited me to go, and it was so, so, so cool. It's awesome. Like I felt,
Yeah.
I can't believe I even said that. So every time I have a friend from out of town come, we go right away to the Vikings Museum. It's so awesome,
Yeah. No,
and they're
it's
adding new
really a great
stuff.
experience. They actually have a recording from the 60s, a recording of a Skol Viking song that's sort of a 60s, almost like a, I don't even know what you want to call it, but kind of a flower power type performance of the Skol song that
Yeah,
they
yeah.
actually made a record of it with Norm Van Brocklin on the front of it. It's really kind of interesting. But there's just a lot of cool things to see there. If you're a Viking fan, it's they actually have a section there too. I don't want to spoil my TikTok, but there's a section there too that has every one of the coaches with voice clips from them talking about working for the Vikings, which is really, really cool. It's very, very cool. So
Yeah.
if you're a fan, it's a good place to go.
I have a couple selfies from that with the Mike Tice with one because, like I said, that's the only likable coach, at least in my era.
Yeah,
Well, Denny, but as some people mentioned in the chat, he was a complicated guy.
he
Uh,
was. Yeah,
you loved him when they were winning, but speaking of coaches that give a good press conference,
yeah. Well,
Denny
and
one
Denny, the thing about Denny was a hell of a coach, but Denny was really shitty to the media. He was real shitty to the media, and there were guys, and Zimmer was the same way. I mean, I think it was Tomasani or whatever. Maybe I'm trying to think.
Chris
Maybe
Thomas,
not Tomasani, but
Chris
yeah.
Thomas,
Well, Tomlinson. That Thomason. It was
my
Thomason.
my
Yeah.
bestie, my
Yeah.
bestie.
Who? Yeah. I mean, he just berated those guys, and Denny Green. I think ultimately, he'll be judged not necessarily wins and losses in regular season games. He'll be judged by two things: drafting Randy Moss, which is great, and
Mhm.
sort of helping piss away the '98 NFC Championship. His time management there cost the Vikings a chance to win that game.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. And speaking of Thomason, he writes for the Broncos now, so he covers Sean Payton now. So it's like, wow,
Yeah,
to go have those two back to back, but he says that Peyton isn't as bad. I actually talked to him for, I don't know, a while, maybe like because we really are, me and Thomason really are friends, but I talked to him like right around Christmas for, I don't know, 45
yeah,
minutes, an hour. And because that guy is just like a walking box of trivia, but we were talking about Sam Darnold and what he thought the Vikings should do. And he said, yeah, they got to figure out a way to keep him. And of course, I agreed with him at the time. And then, literally, as soon as the Vikings lost, he texted me and was like, "Forget what I said about Sam Darnold." And it was just so funny coming from Chris Thomason because I mean, whatever. If people have listened to their press conferences,
right.
the kind of guy that he is, and it was just funny. I don't know. Maybe you had to be
Well,
there. But,
no. I listen.
he's
I
just
it's
a
it's
character.
interesting the inside. Like those guys. I think it's hard. One of the guys I really like is Matthew Collar, but one of the knocks I have on Matthew Collar is he's a fan, but he isn't. He'll never say I'm a fan. I'm just here reporting on things. Um, but I he just gets so negative sometimes that as a
Mhm.
fan, there's the truth about who the Vikings are, right? And then there,
Right.
and you'll probably agree with him here. He was not a Cousins guy at all,
Yeah, I know.
from beginning to end.
Early
And
adapter.
correct. And I do agree on that note that there was some contract stuff that really screwed things up for the Vikings. I like the fact that the Vikings took a swing. I wasn't sure even then that that was a swing that was going to work.
Mhm.
Because you had a championship level team that was in essence a quarterback away.
Yep.
Were
Yep.
they a quarterback away? I mean,
No, to me, that
maybe.
wasn't the missing piece. That wasn't the missing piece.
Yeah,
We had some other things that they needed to work on.
right,
I mean, look, think of obviously Case Keenum. I think he was more of like a gun. He would take those risks, and luckily at
right.
that time it worked out for him. It never really worked out for him before or after, but it worked out for him then. But I wonder if that team after that 2018 would have plugged in a Sam Darnold, who we saw have the success he had this year. I mean, we saw this season he gave you the same or better results than Kirk Cousins. So
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. We were all vindicated for those of us who felt that
right.
way.
Well, and
Uh,
I think looking back at that 17 team, the defense was great, the offense was good. That was a team that was on their backup quarterback in Keenum, on their backup running backs because Delvin Cook got hurt too. And so that was a team that offensively was challenged at times. The defense was probably the best defense, one of the, well, probably close to being the best defense the Vikings had during the Zimmer era. Um,
Till the
and
last 6 quarters.
yeah,
Last 6 quarters of
yeah,
the season, yeah, it all went to
it's
hell
just
after that.
brutal. The whole thing is, I mean, that's why it's like I love the Minneapolis Miracle. I still get chills when I hear the call, whether it's Paul
Yeah.
Allen or Joe Buck. But I'll say it's hard for me because there's always, oh, the Minneapolis Miracle was great. Yeah, it was, and then 38-7.
Right, yeah, I mean, I
I
can't
can't
even
wash that
appreciate
away.
it. No, it spoils it for me. Like, I know so many people, I mean, I'm glad I was there. It was exhilarating. It's probably but honestly, I don't know. I can't say if it was the most exhilarating thing I've ever seen because 'cause I've seen some moments that I think were just as cool because they didn't, like, ruin my life for 6 months immediately a week later. I mean, there are some times one that stands out to me is, well, any Packers win stands out to me, of course, but the very first game ever at US Bank Stadium in 2016, that was an exhilarating game start to finish. And it was all the anxiety that led up to that when you see the schedule release and you're like, oh my God, this is the first game at US Bank Stadium. Really? We're never going to hear the end of this if this doesn't go our way. Like this could
Correct.
seriously curse this stadium. And then it was just
Right.
such a fabulous game. It was just like all of that was released. So I mean, that was another awesome one. I mean, they shouldn't have been in that position with the Minneapolis Miracle. Obviously, it was so cool. It was so cool, but
Right.
it just
Yeah.
kind of lost its
Yeah.
its
I mean,
luck for me.
I do think that if the Vikings don't blast away that 17-0 lead, I think if they score a touchdown or two and it's 31-7 or 14, I think the mind space is different for the Vikings the following week. I think they were gassed. I think mentally they were gassed, and there's no other explanation for it. I mean, Keenum wasn't the same guy. There just wasn't the energy they had from the previous week. So it's all mental gymnastics now, trying to figure out why we lost 38-7. But um,
And we got
I don't
Alex
know.
McLeay here giving his flowers to Kai Forbath for making the long field goal,
No.
or the Minneapolis Miracle wouldn't have happened. So yeah,
He
he
was
does it.
great Kai Forbath was great that day. Michele's right there. I mean, he was exceptional that day and really saved. I mean, he saved us. I mean, people don't look back at how big those field goals. He misses any of them, and we probably lose.
Yeah, yeah, he could have walshed it for sure. Like
Yeah.
like the
Did he
previous
miss one? I wonder. Did he miss one in the first half though? I think he missed one
Kai.
in the first half. Yeah. Did he miss one in the first half?
He maybe did. I'm not sure. I never
Oh,
rewatched it. Well, I probably rewatched it like the week leading up to, but I haven't watched
yeah.
it since then. No, I haven't. But
Yeah.
okay, well, let's wrap up here. We're hitting an hour, but this just flew by. It was so fun
No, I
having you
love
on.
it.
There's
Thank
so
you
much to
again.
talk about. Yeah. When we didn't even get to
No.
talk about free agency or any of that, so we'll have to come back on after that's went through all
Yeah.
wrapped up in what, 3 weeks now or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
The
much
combine,
time.
I'm working on getting some NFL credentials because I want to be able to travel and do a little more of the reporting side of it.
Oh, cool.
Um,
That's
I'm
awesome.
getting a I'm getting a motorhome put together. We're going to take a motorhome out to Green Bay for the draft. So if you're looking to go to the draft, we got space for one more, Sally. So
Oh, okay. Well, I'll consider that. The
yeah.
Vikings have had me go to their draft party for the last few years, so I probably can't stand up their invitation. But you never know when they're
Look at
gonna just.
you.
You
La
never
di
know when
da. Yeah.
they're gonna cut ties with me. It's gonna come one of these days. One of these days, I'm
Yeah.
gonna do something, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, we don't want to be associated with hers." And it could be this year. It could be so. If so,
Well,
I would take the road
if
trip.
if you don't pull a Ragnar and get crazy on him, right, and ask for $20,000 and all that kind of jazz that he went after, you're probably safe. Here's
Well,
the thing. I talked a little bit about going to Detroit last year for the draft, and now I have a group of guys that want to get a motorhome and head out to Green Bay to Lambeau and do some TikTok and YouTube lives and just
yeah.
sort of make some content out there. And Green Bay is always a I don't want to say good things about the Packers, but their
It's tough,
fans,
but yeah.
their fans are legitimately good people, most of them,
Yep.
and the ones that are there, the ones you get away from Lambeau, they get stupid, but the ones that are actually the 1265 Lombardi people, the Lombardi folks that live on Lombardi Avenue or whatever, they're really good football fans and they're knowledgeable and still hate the Vikings. That's okay. I'm not sending them any Christmas cards either. So
No, every time I've been there, for the most part, they are always very kind to me and
yeah,
welcoming and invite me to their tailgates and give me food. And yeah, so I can't say really much bad about them. I've been far worse places, but I agree with you. The ones that come here or the ones that live here, those are the ones I don't fuck with. The
yeah,
ones the
yeah,
ones in Limbo are cool, but the ones that are here are just they are a different breed for sure. Okay, I thought I saw
yeah.
something in the chat I was going to bring up, but I forgot. But all right, cool. Well, you guys, thank you for tuning in. It was so nice chatting with you and have
No,
everybody getting
always
to
a
know
pleasure.
you. And you
Thank
guys
you
tune in.
for this. I appreciate it.
Of course, you guys tune in tomorrow night for Tyler's show here on Vikings First and Skol. And thank you everybody for being here. Love you all. Skol.
Yes, cool.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And rate us on your favorite aggregator. And a big shout out goes to Sal and her guests on this Vikings First and Skol production, partnered with the Fans First Sports Network. Thanks, everyone, and Skol.